experiences and the events of your lives, that has got to be the basis of the black country of the past. So your memories are priceless. You may think, well, I'm an ordinary working class person. I went to school, I left school, I took a job, I got married. Don't amount to much. It does. It does. Your input into this region is as important as any celebrity. And I'll come to that in a minute and demonstrate what I'm talking about. You know, if there's an accident or an incident, whatever the accident or incident is, what do the authorities do? What's the first thing they set about doing? They set about finding eyewitness. Because an eyewitness will supply factually exactly what took place. And it's the same with your lives, and it's the same with the past of this region. You are all factual eyewitnesses. What you have up here tells the story in full. And let me tell you why I feel strongly about that. In 2002, there was a book published. I've got a copy of the cover of it here. It was all about the celebrities, famous people of the black country. But what it was claiming was that these people actually built the region. Well, I read the review of this book, and I wasn't very happy about it. So I got in touch with the person that did the review. His name was Peter Rhodes. You probably all know him. He writes for the Express and Star. And I said to him, Peter, you don't mind me approaching you about this? I said, but you've done a review of a recent book. Oh, yes, he says. He said, well, what's the problem, Tom? I said, well, can you tell me something? Who were actually included in this book? I said, because I haven't seen it. Well, he said, I've got a copy on my desk, I'll tell you. So he started quoting me the names of the people that were in there, and there was Julie Walters, the actress. There was Jack Hayward from the Wolves. There was the Richardson brothers. There was Rachel Hale Flynn. You know, she's from Techno. And the list went on. And I said to him, well, tell me something. How many working class names are in that book? He says, none. I said, precisely. I said, and that's why I'm contacting you. I said, because it's totally wrong to give an image that it was that type of people that built up this region, because it's simply not true. I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to write a letter to your editor. I said, I'm going to tell him who I think are the people that made this region. All right. He said, knowing you, Tom, he said, you probably will, and I did. And I wrote to him, and I finished off by saying, if anyone really wants to document what life was like in Wednesbury and Darlaston and Tipton and Bilston, you name it, all you got to do, go to your local Asda or Morrison's, or whichever one of those supermarkets you use, stand at the position where people come out to pay their bills, you know. Watch for the people coming through as they pay for their groceries. Watch for them with grey hair, probably carrying a stick, finding it difficult to move. I said, all you've got to do, as they come through the check counter, take them aside and say to them, can you help me? I want to build up a factual documentary about the Black Country. And you look pretty elderly. And they'll probably say, yeah, I'm 80, I'm 70, so on. And then you start asking them. And then you'll get your answer. Because they'll tell you all you want to know. Because I really, really believe that that's the basis you have to start at. If you're going to really do something about passing on the history of this region to future generations. I just mentioned that in passing because I think it's important. And it points out, highlights how important you are, although you may not think you are. Now what we're going to do this afternoon, or I've been asked to do anyway, whether I make a job of it or not, I don't know, you'll have to be the judge of that. We're supposed to be recording what it was like in the Black Country at the end of the war, and just prior to the end of the war. What was happening in the area? How were people's lives? What was their daily routine? And above all, what those in authority were doing about changing the terrible image that some towns in this area had got and had for many, many years about being grimy, dirty, horrible places that nobody wanted to know about. That's what we're going to do. And it takes me back to when I was 18. About 200 years ago, I think that was. And I just started my national service. Part of that national service, it was a time when the government was anxious to turn young people into decent citizens, responsible citizens, you know, tear away teenagers. And that's what we were. We really didn't know anything. What did you lot know at 18? I don't know a lot. Perhaps you knew a lot more than me. Anyway, part of the training was that every Wednesday you had to go to these lessons, or lectures they call them, and they used to bring in these experts, very well educated people, and they used to have all these young national servicemen in front of them, and their task was to try and tell them about the heritage and history of the country that they were serving. Just imagine it. A beautiful June afternoon, the sun's shining, and you've got a bunch of teenagers, and they're in a room, and they know that all they're going to be told about is the history of this area and the history of that area, and all about that famous person. Bored stiff, they wanted to get out. They were thinking about, I wonder what girl we can get in with tonight. I wonder what picture we can go to, what dance we can go. They didn't want to be at a lecture. They found those lectures were really, really very boring. And at the end of them, the poor chap that was doing the lecture, a fully educated officer, highly educated, you had to be. I mean, if you were a lecturer in the services, you really were a person of high education, else you wouldn't have been an officer. So there was this young officer, I remember it well, and at the end of every session he used to say, like we're saying today, you got any questions? Got any observations? And I'll tell you, week after week, these teenagers, they used to sit there and there was never any response until this day. He started to tell people about the regions of the country. He covered the West Country, he covered London, he covered the North. And every week he took a different section, told them all about the attributes and the good things about the area that he was talking about. And this day, he said, now I've told you all about the wonderful things. You young lads, you're 18 years old, what awaits you, what a wonderful world there is out there, and what a wonderful country you're in. He said, but now I'm going to tell you about an alternative, and that is the black spot. He said, I'm going to tell you about a region that you best try and avoid, because what you see, what you hear, will upset you. He said, it's a terrible place. I can't practically really describe it to you. And he says, I call it the Black Country in Birmingham. Right away, I was half asleep. Right away, ears clicked. And all these lads round up, some from Birmingham, some all over the place. And I said, what's the matter? I said, I want to know what he's going to say. And he said, when you go to that area, he said, it really depresses you. He said, particularly if you take a train ride from Birmingham Snow Hill to Wolverhampton. And he said, you would see sights that you wouldn't believe existed. You will go along a railway line and look out of the window and you'll see nothing but stagnant canals, piles of rubbish, industrial waste, and you wonder to yourselves, and this is what sparked me on, you wonder to yourself, what kind of people choose to live in a place like that? Oh, God. Anyway, when it come to the end, I was the young colleagues that were with me, that had joined up with me, you know, they were saying, Tom, what's up? I said, that man is driving me up the wall. When he came to the end, he said, no, he said, I don't suppose there'll be any, there never is. Is there any questions? Is there any observations? And I said to him, he said, Tom, sit down. He said, don't forget the flight sergeant's on the corner and he's watching anything. You're going to get yourself into trouble. I said, I'll let him get away with what he said. So I stood up. And I think that is the first time when I felt I really got to do something about the region I come from. Because I was born in the slums. I know what they're all about, the same as a lot of you do. And it was that lecture, I'm sure, and the fact of what I'd seen from when I was growing up every day of my life, people living from hand to mouth in terrible squalor. It's almost unbelievable. I think that's what persuaded me that I ought to get involved in public life. So I stood up there and I said to this, if you asked a question, I said, or one of the questions I want to ask you, I said, since when has Birmingham been part of the Black Country? I looked at you and said, I don't quite know what you're saying. I said, I'm asking you the question. You just said that you're talking to people about do not take a journey to Birmingham, the Black Country, because it's a terrible area that depresses you. I said, Birmingham, the Black Country. I said, as far as Black Country people are concerned, Birmingham is a foreign place. And he said, well, I thought that they were all... I said, no, they are not. And I said, and the last thing that you said, I said, I find particularly insulting. And the lad, now son, Charles, he's going to get a put on a job. I said, the last thing you said, I said, I find the most objectionable. I said, you summed up your comments by saying, how can people choose to live in a place like the Black Country? All those areas that I passed through, Bilston, Wednesbury, Tipton, he said, went up, go on that train journey. And I said to him, the answer is, they don't choose to live there. They live there because that is an area that's solely devoted to one word, work, and that's why they're there. I said, nobody with an ounce of sense in their brain chooses to go and live in an area like that. I said, you wouldn't. Anyway, at the end, this flight sergeant, he'd got up and he come across and he said to this, he said, I'm sorry about that. And to give him his due, this education officer said, no. He said, I come here every Wednesday. He said, I try and uplift these young lads, tell them about the country they live in and all its good things. He said, so when I ask questions, he said, I go away very disappointed because I get nobody responding. He said, he's responding. He said, he's practically put me in my place, so don't apologise for what he's done. I welcome it. He said, and I hope that the way I come next Wednesday, we'll have a similar confrontation. And I remember that, but I've thought about it since. Thought about it many, many times. And you know, to be honest, I was wrong, he was right. The Black Country is a terrible place to live, has always been. It's got to be because of its environment, because of the conditions that people have to live from day to day. It couldn't be anything other. And even today, 2015, about 3 weeks ago, a woman stopped me in the street and, hello, Tom. And I said, I haven't seen you, but she's not been on holiday. I said, oh yes, she's not been down to Cornwall. She said, oh, we go every year. I said, oh yeah, I said, that's very nice. She said, but you know what, Tom? She said, when that journey starts to come towards the Black Country, she said, I dread it. She says, I hate Bilston. She said, I hate it for the fact that I'm going to bring my family back to that type of environment, when I'd much prefer them to be in an environment where there's fresh air and greens and all the rest of it. So you see, even today, people are not comfortable living in this area. They prefer to live somewhere else, and that's only natural. But we're going to talk about what happened to us, to you, after the war. To do that, we've really got to go back to 1932. Because in 1932, there was an organisation in Bilston called the United Unemployed Workers Movement. And they had been involved in protest meetings and demonstrations about the unemployed in Bilston, which was extremely high at that time, for some considerable time. And they had a secretary. You'll know the name, or you should do. His name was Ben Bilbo. I know he's not the type of person that everybody would choose to live next door to. Let's put it that way. He was very fiery, very outspoken, and very honest, very straight. And his one ambition in life was to fight for better conditions for his fellow human beings. That was his aim in life, all through his life. And in 1932, he got to hear of a man called Fenner Brockway. He was one of the most outstanding journalists in Europe. In fact, he was one of the most outstanding journalists in the world. He was known all over Europe, he was known in America, and he was writing a book, and it was called Hungry England. And to write that book, he wanted to have conversations with people in various parts of the country that were living in unhealthy conditions, who were living in squalor, who were finding it difficult to cope from day to day. And he wanted to do that by interviewing people from all walks of life. So Ben Bilbo contacted him and asked him to come to Bilston, 1932. He said, we can give you information you can use in your book, Couldn't Be England. So amazingly, he agreed to come. He probably didn't even know where Bilston was at the time. He agreed to come. And the fact that he came, he instigated an historic event in Bilston's history that would stand for years and years and years. We know about it now, actually. He came and he was taken on a tour of the Newtown area, which was one of the most notorious areas of Bilston. The conditions that people were living in Temple Street, Gossett Street, Oxford Street, Brainley, all that area, were indescribable. So he took him on this tour, and after he'd been on the tour, they held a public meeting, obviously. And, I'm trying to find the, if you bear with me, they took him on this tour, and I said to him, Mr. Brockway, you've been all over the world, you've seen the lot, you've mixed with the highest people. What's your verdict on Bilston? You're not going to like this. And he said, I can give you that verdict. 24 words. 24 words, he says, and I'll summarise what Bilston is and what it means and what I've seen. And these are those 24 words, and I'll make sure I quote them because they're very, very important. They're really part of Bilston's history. I don't know why. We do history about Bilston, we seem to sanitise it. If it's unpleasant, push it under the carpet. I mean, if it's nice, if it's about the good old days and things like that, fair enough, good. But if it's nasty, if it has an atmosphere that's not very pleasant, forget it. I don't think it should be forgotten, because it's part of our lives and it's part of the lives of our parents and grandparents. And these are those famous, famous 24 words. Bilston, he said, where have I got it? Are you ready for this? Talking about your town. Surely no place could have grown up so ugly as this without some evil mind having deliberately planned to wipe out every trace of beauty. How about that for a description? You wouldn't find that description about a town in the West Country or the home counties or anywhere like that. That was his summing up of what Bilston was. He went further. He also said that, in his opinion, there are houses in that town, hundreds of them, more suitable for chickens to live in than human beings. How about that for a double-barrel description? Those 24 words plus that. Well, you can imagine what a sensation it caused, not only in Bilston, but all through the Black Country, indeed nationally. What was his reward for coming all the way down to Bilston, doing that survey? What was his reward? Well, his book, Hungry Library, was on display in here and in schools, and the knowledgeable, far-seeing elders of Bilston, who were in control of the town then, they decided something's got to be done about this man. So he was banned from the town. He was told, never come back to this town again, and we're going to take your book out of every school and library. We don't want to know about you. Just leave us alone. And then it would have stayed, I suppose. But one other thing I'll tell you about before we hit our 2:30 time limit. History always repeats itself. What goes round comes round. Now, honestly, it does. We're in the year 2015 at the moment. I'll give you an example of that. In 1918, there was a speech made at Wolverhampton by Lloyd George on the